It's oh, we're recording in progress. That they've had a good experience, they've had a bad experience, and really, it's no different than any other hire. It's did you find the right candidate? So I went ahead just to geek out. I'll share with you some stats that most people don't know. And I'm just going off what Cyberbacker's stats are. So for applications this year, we've received 293,493. So we're averaging 12,760 per week. And then on average of those, we're doing an interview. Year to date, we're at 79,349. That's an average of 3,449 per week, 3,400 interviews per week, which is 8%. Of those, we'll do a second interview. We've done a second interview of 6,173, which is 268 per week. That's 27%. And we've hired 1,647 so far this year. That's 71 per week average. And that's 0.56 of all applicants. So if you've ever had someone say, I tried hiring online, it didn't work, you have to look at, did you have the right candidate to start with? Because if you miss on that first one right there, nothing else matters. And it just truly does not work. So it's that level of talent. That's what you're looking for. So you've got a 0.56% chance of just knocking it out of the park. And that's a tough thing. And then you look at the other reasons, because first we've got to go ahead and get the right candidate. The second is we have to make crystal clear sure that they're doing the right job for us. And this is one of the challenging things because a lot of times people are very reactive. And the time that they want to hire a transaction coordinator is when they just put deal number 15 under contract. And they're doing more transactions right now than they've ever done in their life. And we hire hoping and thinking that's going to continue. The challenge is sometimes it doesn't continue. And you'll have people, I know that you've probably seen this with other agents in the area, that they'll go ahead and hire a full-time transaction coordinator, and it's a great thing, but then they run out of transactions. And it's because what they didn't do is they didn't build their offense at the same level they were building their defense. Your great transaction coordinating team, listing management team, all the people that support you have to be equivalent in to match your offense side. People helping you generate business, work your database, run your ads, and stuff like that. And so when you look at what makes it work and what doesn't make it work, did we hire the right person? Did we give them the right job? And is our company built to go ahead and sustain that job? I've had another reason because I looked at why does this not work when it doesn't work? One of the things that doesn't work is when you go ahead and you go out and find a great transaction coordinator. If you're looking at KPA, you're looking at that sociability vector, and on one side it says task oriented, and on the other it says people oriented. And it's surprising to me how many times you'll see people who they'll take a task oriented person and put them in a people oriented role. It's like taking a transaction coordinator and having them do inside sales. It simply doesn't really work that well. And it doesn't work well the other way, which we've also seen where someone will go ahead and hire someone to do inside sales. And if you're investing in that first, that can be very detrimental to your business because it's actually one of those things that when it works, a lot of people aren't ready for it. And I've witnessed agents who are like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hire someone to do inside sales. They're going to set appointments and the appointments scale up. And the inside sales is saying, well, you can't go on any more appointments. So why do I keep setting them? And the agent's doing that plus transaction coordinating, and they're trying to figure out why it doesn't work. So then we see them transition their inside sales to be a transaction coordinator. And then they mess up a transaction and they're like, this doesn't work. It works very, very well, but you're going to want to scale appropriately. So for me, if I'm telling you, if you're making your absolute first hire, the first thing that you leverage is your tasks. Like period, it's you. For me, that's my cyberbacker, my wonderful assistant, Jen. Jen, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
She's sitting here on my desk. If I show you, she's right here. Everyone say hi to Jen. All right. They're not that vocal, Jen. It's okay. It's not you. But anyway, and we just typically chat all day on Zoom, and she's responsible for running defense for me. So when a call comes in, if I'm here with you guys, I'm here with you guys. I'm probably not going to go ahead and have the call. She'll make sure it got answered. If a text message comes in, if an email comes in, because we're committed to going ahead and being able to be responsive and filter and handle as much as we can at once. That's her job, is making sure that I'm able to stay on my schedule without digital distractions. And originally, when I hired for my own person, I didn't want someone who was going to do inside sales. I want someone task oriented. They're fixing background noise. But I hired someone whose task was keeping me on task. Every single day was going ahead and making sure that I had my call list. I knew who I was calling, and then listening while I made the calls, just like Jen's listening right now, and typing notes in the CRM. And then when I had an appointment, she was going ahead and making sure that preparation or paperwork was prepared, and I'm ready to go on that appointment. So then I can take a task-oriented person, and if I need help on transactions, well, they're task-oriented anyway. So it's a very natural progression. But your first hire, when you're hiring, this is someone who should go ahead and handle all your tasks that are not worth your investment of time. It's not the highest and best use of your time. So, Jen, what else do you want to say about that? You handle my schedule, you handle email, texts, emails. You basically make sure that I'm functioning at the best I can, correct? One of my favorite things, because like I'm going to tell you right now, I never was good at typing notes into a CRM when I was calling people, but when you're calling your database, we've heard that's important. Someone says, oh, I'm having surgery, and you call them the next week, hope you're well, or you text them or you send them a card. I was never the guy that could go ahead and make notes in the CRM and keep making calls. I was the guy that would make a call, type a note in the CRM, and then need to go ahead and get a drink, then a bathroom break, and then maybe make it back to my desk to start over. And what happens is, what I found is, as long as I'm able to keep my momentum and just go from one call to the next call to the next call, just call my database and talking to people, and notes were there, and I had my reminders, things worked. And one of my favorite things that I've done is I've had Jen go ahead and every single day I get an itinerary. I know what I'm doing. I know who I have to call. I know exactly what my responsibilities are. I know my schedule, and I work from one sheet. And that's probably the biggest secret, that if you're working on your first hire, that's it for you. Someone who knows what's on your 411, someone who knows what's on your GPS, and someone who's helping you stay accountable to your priorities. Because once you've nailed that sucker, everything else gets easier. But there's too many people I see right now that they're reacting to situations in their world, and they neglect their priorities, and they're running a very reactive business. And we're kind of right now, I was with Gary earlier, and he was talking about last year. They're looking at projections for how we're going to end this year. Last year, 6.1 million home sales. And this year, we're looking at 5.2, maybe 5.1 million home sales. So there are fewer home sales to go around. But the number of distractions for people's up. If you look at some of the older people in real estate, they kind of had it easier, because there was only 1 to 2 ways to communicate, which was the phone, where you were actually talking and there was this cord that connected it to the wall, or it was in person. And in today's world, all of us now, it's email, text, call, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Parlor. I'm trying to think of what else people, I mean, it gets outrageous. Oh, WhatsApp, Viber, what's that on Telegram? And it keeps adding. And the interesting thing is, just going ahead managing your digital communication is a full-time job. I mean, it's about impossible. And so having someone help with that has been massively huge. But the distractions are going to go up. The fires you're going to have to put out are going to go up. Transactions as a whole is going to go down. And the only way you get ahead of this is to go ahead and leverage and get the highest return on investment of your time. It's always crazy to me that people, they think like investors when it comes to buying real estate. And if I put this much money in, this is how much money I can get out, and here's the time frame that I can do it. But they neglect to think like an investor of their time. If I put this much time in, here's what I'm going to get out, and here's the amount of time I'll need to get that out of it. But you're always top grading yourself. I see too many people going ahead and doing like the minimum wage jobs and not doing the things that earn the most. And that's where people typically get behind. And that's where hiring someone's great. When people talk about wages in your market right now, are you able to hire anyone for minimum wage? Or is that kind of a joke? Ryan, you're kind of
definitely not.
Hire anyone for that.
I would definitely not think minimum wage would be something you could find anyone willing to work for. You can't even get kids willing to work at Burger King for minimum wage.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like that almost everywhere I found so far when I asked that question. Here in Utah, minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. No one's working for that. No one's even showing up. But when you look globally, the gross national income per capita here in the US, which is where you take the total income earned by a country divided by its population, that's the gross national income per capita. The average right now is about 66,000 US dollars. In the Philippines, using the same math, it's less than 3,800. But you've got to remember, there's some people that they cannot read, they cannot write. They're working in provinces on farms, and it doesn't pay very much. You're like a couple bucks a day. It's pretty bad. And when you can hire someone and you can pay them awesome money, they tend to stay. And that's one of the big things. So that's a lot of it. As far as
a bunch of questions for you, Craig, if you don't mind. and
ask
jump
me
in.
anything.
So I'm actually looking at hiring a virtual assistant right now. So we have
Cool.
a team, we have 2 full-time operations staff already. And so we're looking to potentially use someone overseas or maybe even someone US bound or US soil based. So the big concerns I have with hiring somebody that is not in the United States is, well, number one, to be language barrier. And I, not necessarily from, I know English is a first language there. However, like there's a lot of nuance in our language in the United States. How difficult is that of a challenge to overcome just in general? And or is it common for people to understand the nuance already?
Yeah, no, it's not common because you still have people that get frustrated when they call into their phone service or their credit card and you get transferred to the Philippines. And the person right there speaks English, but their accent is hard to understand and some of those nuances. So what we found, and this is strategically how we find people, Ryan, when people start having to go back into the call centers, we put billboards up outside the call centers saying work from home. And when you have those people that have been in the call center industry, that they had the opportunity to work from home during COVID, and they're raising their hands saying, how do I do that? That's the person you want. Like those people right there, because some of them, they've been 10 years talking on the phone to people in the US. You can't tell. They sound great. People that they go ahead, and there's the term over there in the Philippines is call center hoppers, that they'll go ahead and take a job at a call center and for whatever reason quit and go to another one and quit and go to another one. And they're kind of inconsistent. They might say they have the same background, but the level of communication is not the same. So it's all on how you're finding. And I mean, this is the why we're only hiring 5.56%. It's because you're probably a good 80% who've worked in the call centers that, yes, they've spoke on the phone, but no, they are probably not someone you're going to be able to do very well communicating with.
Yeah. So second, actually, question I'd have on that is if when they do work from home, we had one of our team members that worked with a different company a few years ago and hired someone in the Philippines. They had issues with uptime on their internet, and they also had rolling blackouts and things like that at times. And so the issue was really that they couldn't work when they didn't have power or they didn't have internet. How is that situation in the Philippines, and what would you expect in terms of uptime percentages?
There's a couple different things with that. So one, rolling blackouts are less common than people talk about. We found people will work with more than one client and claim rolling blackout. And it's really, I have to take care of this person because I'm working for 2 and I don't want to tell you. You can go ahead and make sure. And by the way, when you're hiring globally, I have to give this disclaimer, make sure that you can enforce your contracts. According to if you're hiring from the Philippines, according to Section 150 of the Philippines Commercial Code, you cannot take legal action if you're a foreigner against someone in the Philippines. So meaning if they steal your intellectual property, I had someone send me a message, dead serious, that says, if you hire me, I'll give you 1,000 Zillow leads. I said, where did you get 1,000 Zillow leads? And they said, my former client, he. Like, that's theft. That is theft, you know? So make sure when you're doing this, you're legally protected. It's set up the right way. We've got multiple entities in the Philippines because that happens. And you want to make sure anytime you're doing this, you're legal. So second is rolling blackouts aren't as common, and it's knowing the areas and where they are and when they are. And in some areas, yes, they have planned rolling blackouts. However, in our hiring process, one of the things that we've learned is we require you have 2 internet connections. Typically, the one is a mobile connection because yes, you might have Globe, which is one of the larger providers, their internet goes down. True story, it might. And you can go ahead and go on a backup. My assistant, Jen, fantastic, sitting right here. She's not missed a day of work. And has her internet going ahead and went on the fritz a couple times? Yes, it has. And she'll just go ahead, turn on her hotspot on her phone, and we go back to work. She doesn't miss. But you have to look at when you're hiring the right person, that doesn't happen. And when you know the areas well enough, you typically don't have those problems because you know where the person is and you can look at their secondary internet and you can look at their secondary computer, and you want them to have both, because we've all had tech glitches, and yes, they need to get fixed, and it's all how good your backup strategy.
Okay.
Great question.
So
Great question.
another question, unless anybody else has questions, I'll just keep going. But
Keep going.
I guess one question is, from a hiring trainer, from a training standpoint, is there anything different you would do? So we usually follow the 30, 60, 90 program
Yep.
with the Keller Williams thing. What would, if anything, would be different with hiring a virtual person versus in-person person?
It's very, very similar. When you look at the 30, 60, 90, for a while, that's like the standard of keeping your job, you know? And so where we've implemented 30, 60, 90s that are great, as far as training, breaking it down to priorities. So here's kind of the best way to explain it. For the airline, the most important thing is that plane lands, and the seconds that it takes off. But we're going to worry about it landing okay and knowing that we can do that before it's ever going to take off. So in the beginning, it's about setting up your priorities. Okay, because some concepts, when they're in training, take a while to learn, and some don't really take that long to learn. But it's looking at what are the needs of the business that you should go ahead and be implementing first. So one of the things that we found works really, really well, this is what we do. As soon as someone goes ahead, we have the job description, we know the priorities, we go ahead and we put them with a seasoned person who's going to teach them exactly, here's the growth plan. And they'll say, you're going to shadow me on how to do this, this, this. And with these things, here's some videos you're going to want to watch, and we're going to test for competency. And then, oh, by the way, we have these masterminds that you're going to want to attend. And I mean, there's different masterminds, like we have our own, but you can go ahead and plug them into masterminds that you have in your market center and different things, as long as you can make them feel part of the conversation and they can take some great stuff away. That's where they typically get the most, because when they're not participating in the mastermind, sometimes they're not comfortable with it and they're not willing to answer the questions. And it seems like they're trained, but they're not trained. So masterminds really uncover that. But I go ahead and go back. You don't go ahead and work on teaching them the second thing until they've learned the first one. And you go down the list and you see how quickly they can do it. So,
okay.
Great question, though. Great question.
Okay.
I'm happy to sit here and answer questions for you guys on pretty much anything you want to know. Here's the second piece that most people don't have. Someone else, did you unmute? If not, I'll keep going. Okay, it's retention. Because what typically happens is there are people out there that have made it their career to go find a client, ask to get trained, and during training, they're looking for their next client, and they're kind of the serial, like, I'm going to go work, but I'm not going to work, and I'm going to go work, and I'm not going to work. And so you want to look at different things like quality analysis software, which anytime we hire someone, we want to know, what are you doing during the work? And are you doing that? Because if they claim they're in training, but their computer says they're playing video games or they're idle, something's not necessarily happening the way it should happen. But being able to audit and make sure that, you know, the expectations were met, work was performed, training was completed, is very, very critical. And then retention, because once they're good, they know they're valuable, and you've got to be able to keep them. So a couple of things that we've done that work really well. We have we did a profit share program at Cyberbacker, and it's kind of how we grew the company, because a lot of our best people come from referrals. So I talked to Gary, we modeled it exactly, same 7 levels, just like KW. Last year, we profit shared $647,000, but the goal is to create retirement for them. And then the next thing that we did is, when we asked people, what do they want? What are your goals? They said, we want to buy houses, we want to buy cars. I said, fantastic, you should totally do that. And they said, the challenge is we're working for a US company. And banks, when you're going ahead and working in a foreign country, sometimes have a hard time because they don't know if that company is going to be there next year. And so we created our own company, Cyber Capital, where we loan them money to buy houses and cars. It's also secretly a retention strategy, because when you hold the mortgage on someone's home, they typically don't quit. So, but between profit share, between Cyber Capital being able to loan money with them, and then offering healthcare, those are the 3 big things it took to go ahead and make sure that we have an awesome, awesome retention. Because if you hire someone good and you train them well, that person's more valuable. And if it's very easy for them to leave and go work for someone else, you're starting over. And turnover is the enemy of growth. Ryan, you unmuted. What else you got?
Just a follow-up question on that. So the way this actually works is that we work with you guys and say we hire you to basically hire somebody for us, but we interview them, we help select them. but they're technically an employee of the entity that you own in the Philippines. So that's how you get around, like if you have to sue one of them or something, you can do it because you have an entity in the Philippines.
Yes, we
Is
have
that
some,
right?
yeah,
A
we've got
couple
a
of these.
couple. Yeah. We
Okay.
make sure that we're in compliance with exactly what we need to be in compliance with hiring laws.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then what level of training do you guys provide versus what we would provide? So let's say a transaction coordinator. Obviously, there's a lot of that stuff that's pretty typical and not necessarily specific to our team, but we do have some team specific stuff. So
Yeah.
what would we expect you to provide versus what we should plan on providing?
Okay, so we'll back up. First thing is you meet with a growth backer and they're going to now analyze your business with you, talk about your business, and make sure they can help you. If they can't help you, they're just going to say, hey, look, with what you want to do, you want someone who's going to be able to drive a Ferrari, do a headstand on one hand, and be a web developer transaction coordinator. I can't find that person because it nearly doesn't exist, But then they're going to go ahead and say, okay, based on that, here's probably what you're going to pay. Because we can kind of come within the ballpark of what that job position is going to charge. If you're hiring a full stack web developer, they want more than somebody that's just doing data entry and works a regular day versus graveyards, So it's building that job description first and looking at the cost. The second thing is identifying the priorities and then putting the training plan together. So roughly 20% of all cyber backers are head backers. And the way that so you can go ahead and keep paying what you're paying, they have an opportunity to spend a little bit of time before and after work training other people. And so the head backers will go ahead and meet with the cyber backers. They'll look at the job description and they'll say, okay, you're going to take these online classes. We have over 5,000 hours of recorded training. And then I'm going to test you for competency. Then you're going to shadow me when I do these tasks. And they're going to put together a training plan. So here's everything they've been trained on. And you actually have their training plan. This is what they know. The training they can't provide is preferences, because everyone, what we found, has little preferences on how they would like it done for their business. And so you'll have them ask you questions and they'll kind of get into that in the business evaluation as well as through the process to make sure that we can meet preferences. So we can train them like how to hit the answer button if someone calls your cell phone and you want to have your calls forwarded, because that's like my favorite is having someone handle my calls and my texts. But you might go ahead and have them start open with a different greeting than I would have them start with. So, but little things like that, we train on all of it. And then we do weekly masterminds on Friday, where when people know and understand a process, they can go deeper and look at mastery of it. So, great question, Ryan. Patty.
Yes, I was wondering when you were talking about the timing of when you should bring a cyberbacker in, and typically we do it too late or without enough thought around it. What is the ideal of how we should be planning forward for it?
This is how I do it. This is just me. Maybe might have run wrong, Patty, but this is how I've always done it. I'm not going to tell you I have any special skills. In fact, I'm probably far off from that, but I know my challenges. And so I look at, when does my budget say I can afford to hire? And then I look at what's going to be my return on investment, because I never hired for a position I cannot justify a return on that investment. So what's it going to cost me? How does it make me money? And when I know those things right there, I can justify a hire for myself. And if I can't go ahead and see it make money, and I don't know exactly what it's going to cost me, then you might not be there. I've heard people say, it's 36 transactions. Well, that math came from the average sales price being about 200,000, I think it was. Your average commission being about 6,000. When you go ahead and look at that many deals and you have 12% in MREA for salaries, that was that math. Okay. But today I can hire someone on average, if they're doing a lot of that administrative work, for 15 to 18,000 a year. So you just kind of look at what's it going to cost. Well, I don't want to say it's similar to minimum wage in the US, but it's not far off. So that's what you're looking at. And then making sure that you know exactly how you get the return on investment. And sometimes, go to cyberbacker.com. I can put my phone number in the chat. Go ahead and call me. I'll meet with you, or I'll have someone meet with you. I can cover that with you. There's my phone number in the chat. And you plan out how you get that return on investment. Because if you can't see that, don't do it. You're just hiring to hire. Don't hire just to hire. And I typically see, and this is kind of an interesting thing, people's goals in growing their business is different. Some people, they hire someone so they can work less. And some people hire people so they can get a higher return on investment of your time. Nobody's right or wrong. If the reason that you hire people is so you can get more time with your family, good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. For me personally, though, I want to upgrade the value of my time, but I'm still going to pull a 60-hour a week because I love what I do. So
Yeah, I like the non-judgment there, that it's whatever works best for you.
Well, yeah, because we're not all the same.
Right?
We're not. We run different businesses. We have different goals. There's a different purpose that people got into real estate. And so one size fits all just doesn't really work.
Right. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I'm full of ideas, and sometimes, they make sense, and sometimes it's a totally bad idea, but I believe it. And I mean, we all have our beliefs that come from the evidence we've received, which is our convictions, just like the courtroom.
Yep.
Both sides bring their evidence, forms lays of belief, and you get conviction one way or the other.
Right. And then I had another question about, you had said about a web developer and a data entry person are not the same. What if the mixture of what you're looking for is transaction coordination and then social media? Is that something that can be put together, or are those two disparate?
No. They're similar, but it depends on how you're doing social media. A lot of times your task-oriented side, they may be very creative and able to come up with great social media content. They may.
Okay.
Sometimes that's not their forte, but if you're looking at running specific ads and researching specific demographics, they're going to be good. I mean, for me personally, if I'm doing my first hire and I am going to do someone data entry, I'm going to look at, do I need to build my database? And does my database match my friends on Facebook and what's in my phone? Because if what's on my phone, Facebook, if those people are on my database and I have their contact information, we can do pretty good. And oh, by the way, message people saying, hey, I wanted to make sure that I'm able to get you a Christmas card or a 4th of July card or whatever it is that you're celebrating. Would you mind just sharing with me what your address is, assuming they can't look it up?
Okay.
Or, hey, I just realized that I didn't send your birthday card. When's your birthday? And just updating your database with the pertinent information.
Okay.
That helps you be more appropriate. But yeah, you can. It's diving into what specifically do you have them do on social media.
Yeah, I would need to do the work ahead of time to make it a good fit.
Yeah, a transaction coordinator, database manager who uses social media as a tool, that works great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one last question. I've heard that sometimes a couple of agents will share, like do part-time. How does that scheduling and things work?
It's different with everybody because there's different needs. The challenge that typically happens, and I've got to tell you, just going into it, Patty, because I've seen it quite a bit. When you make an investment, you're hiring someone from your business and it's doing the natural progression it should do, your business grows. When your business grows, you get busy, correct? So when two people are getting really, really busy, they hired one person.
Right.
Well, you can't clone that person and get more hours. The challenge is, Patty, who gets them and who gets to work with them.
Yeah, that's true. Hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, and by the way, is it a bad thing? No. And can you hire part-time? Absolutely. And if you're thinking that way, there's nothing wrong with hiring a part-time person that you say, listen, my goal is to bring you in full-time. And I want to make sure that's your goal too.
Okay.
It's very common. Yeah. So, but you can hire someone full-time, share a person, it just creates problems down the road. It's great in the short term though.
Question just on like what if you're talking about retention, like how long in general do most cyberbackers stay with their I guess team or employer before they move on to the next assignment? Is it something like to plan on every 18 months or?
So for the most part, most people stay with their original person unless something happens. If let's see, and I'm actually pulling up, I'm going to show you guys all the numbers I'm not supposed to. Sound good? Okay, great. Because I'm not very good at keeping secrets. I don't like to. But if I look at just right here, client churn, most of our clients keep their cyber backer, at least so far this year, and they're happy with them, except for 5.87%. And the cyber backers, they'll typically stay with that person 13.33% of the time. So you've got 87% of this time it sticks. The challenge when it doesn't stick, typically what we know is when we go into it and we look at every time we've had a challenge with the client didn't stay, it's because we failed on setting proper expectations and we failed to communicate. We weren't clear on what they wanted. We weren't clear on return on investment. We could have probably asked better questions. We take it all as our problem. It's our fault. Because if it was our fault, then we can be responsible for fixing it. If we blame, well, that person's just lousy, they don't pay their bill, whatever excuse we make about someone else, that doesn't make us better, you know? So there is that 5%. So 95% of the time it works, they stay, they're happy. The cyberbacker though, it's 13.33%. It's because sometimes culturally, there's a difference. If we hire someone who has not been on the phone and dealt with some intense emotional situations, because sometimes I'm going to tell you, you call in, they put you to the other side of the world and you're in a bad mood already. And now you're in a little bit worse mood. And I'll admit I'm one of those people and I feel bad after. But sometimes when there's some heated conversations, the culture is a little bit different in the Philippines than in the US. And they get personally offended and hurt. And they'll leave because of it. And they'll just say this working on thing isn't for me. So that's why typically it happens that they're more likely to quit than you are to let them go.
So what, and kind of along that lines, I guess maybe not along lines, that when you have issues, like you mentioned a head backer. So tell us about the relationship between the employer and the head backer, and then the head backer and the cyber backer.
Yeah. So the head backer, it's kind of like their coach, their trainer, their friend, their mentor. And they're going to go ahead and make sure that they're trained on what they need to be trained on. They're going to hold them accountable to going to the right trainings. They're going to check in with them. They're going to see how they're just doing as a person. Because one of the biggest reasons that we've learned that causes challenges in mental health is that people feel very alone and disconnected. And so if you have a head backer who's kind of their friend, checking in on them, just saying, how's it going? And they continually do that every month, we've noticed that they can start to formulate these great relationships and these great friendships, and it feels a little less alone. We've got a really big community that kind of helps with that. So the relationship is that person's kind of like a coach, teacher, mentor, and trainer. And ideally, we would like to see almost everyone grow into it, because if you want to go ahead and make someone better at learning something, have them teach it. You know, when they have to teach other people, they become a better asset to their client. And so they teach it, they become a better asset. They're paid for teaching, they're paid for training. You know, and then they're able to make a little bit more and they get a residual. So typically they want to work with that person for as long as they can and see them just be as successful as they can.
So then do we actually, like if I hire a cyberbacker, do I meet with the head backer at any time, or I do?
Yeah, you'll meet with them briefly and they'll just go ahead and say, okay, here's what I have for training. Is this right? Yep. Okay. And let me know if you have challenges. And then they'll tell you, I'm going to send you the report so you know exactly what training they've attended. If there's questions, how they did. If there's any challenges, I'm going to reach out and say, I saw some red flags. Because unfortunately, this has happened here where, you see, anyone ever have someone, like you told a friend, they might call them for a reference you put on a job application? Has anyone ever done that? Because I know I did that as a kid for McDonald's. You know, I ended up not getting the job for McDonald's, dang it. But I did that. And we've learned of this online hiring that sometimes they'll have a friend take their assessments. And sometimes they'll have a friend help them with the interview. And when they go to work, that friend's not there. So it doesn't happen often. It is a very small percentage, but we'll go through a validation and someone was listening in, chirping in their ear and making sure they gave the right answers to validate the CBPA, which is just like the KPA. Bert created them both. The only difference between the CBPA and the KPA. So we could tell you, Patty, like they scored here as a database manager, they scored here as a transaction coordinator, they scored here as a listing manager. The only difference is we have them take a typing test, and then we also have an integrity score. We can tell in a vector how likely they are to tell the truth. We can tell if they're one of those people that will tell you the truth, even when it's too much information. And we can tell if it's the person that can justify stealing because their family's hungry. And I'm not going to get into the moral dilemma about that, but it's going to be questions like that to just see where are they at on the truth-telling scale. So, and you probably know where you can expect to see someone And you see that when you hire. So you know exactly what it's going to be like. I know you're going to tell the truth and only the truth, but the head backer has that. They know kind of how they're wired. So, but the relationship with the head backer, they take care of it. And it's actually a trio. We call it a trio because there's the growth backer that you're always going to be in touch with, who's making sure you're having a great experience. They're the person you meet with, you do a business evaluation call. They check in, they say, how's it going? And if you say this is a horrible experience, you're going to connect to someone in career and say, I'm going to fix this. Now you're going to work with someone in the career division who's going to meet with you and say, okay, we've gone through this many candidates. Here's the top 5 that we think are going to be able to do a great job. And you'll do a rapid fire interview where you interview 5 and just spend a couple of minutes on the one you like the most. You'll do a more comprehensive, but that's not agreeing to hire them. It's just agreeing to spend more time with them. Because one of the things that we've learned is that myself are great people in the Philippines to us, being born different places in the US, some people to us, they just don't sound like they have that much of an accent. But for you, for your market, for your location, you might hear a lot of an accent. And so if you're having these interviews, sometimes just the way they sound, you're like, not for my market. And so you don't have to justify why, none of the 5 worked or one of the 5 worked or however, you just go ahead and say, okay, well, this one was my favorite of these 5. And those 5 come from several thousand. So it's not like you're, happy to go ahead and filter the very not so good ones. I mean, we go right up to these are the best people. And then after you've picked that one, you've done the comprehensive interview, the head backer builds out the plan. And some people they've attended because when we go ahead and we start, we offer a lot of free training online. Plus we go ahead and have some while they're in the company. Plus we have our video library. Some people we bring them in and they just jump right into the training and they want to learn as much as they can. And some people you might hire, they've got experience. Unfortunately, their client might not have paid their bill and now they're available. And people like that tend to get hired very quickly. So, but there's a lot of different levels of training that they come with. We found though consistently that we're able to build them out, whether they're experienced or whether they're great, as long as they're talent.
With the difference in culture, will the cyberbacker feel funny bringing something up to their client, whether something's not working out or if they have new ideas or something?
Well, not just culture, but we tend to be in the real estate business, and that tends to have, if I'm getting a look at the disc, a lot of very dominant personalities and a lot of very talkative personalities. And sometimes they are going to be a little bit afraid to bring something up to a very direct, dominant personality. Absolutely. And that's no different what we found that in the US. If you have your high S buyer's agent, ID rainmaker, sometimes they're to bring things up. So we find out it's not as much about the culture as much as the dynamic between the personalities. So that's the bigger thing. You do have D-type driven people in the Philippines too. And sometimes they're comfortable having any conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it is. So, but what we've learned is as long as you're focused on having a great relationship with them and they know that that's where you're coming from, they're typically really good about communication. Great question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Talking about relationships, what are the different ways that you've seen team leaders or ops managers or whoever it is that's keeping that relationship? What are the different ways you've seen them? Like I know Jen is sitting on your desk. Is that pretty typical, or are there
For
different
Jen and
ways
I, Jen, how long have you been sitting on my desk like this?
More than 3 years.
More than 3 years. And Jen, I've worked with different people before Jen. She's just the best. It's different for everybody. Something for me that I do, I've got a photo. If I go right over here on my wall, we're repainting the sheetrock side, but I can show you, I've got pictures of a bunch of different cyberbackers. In fact, I'll show you. And if I take you out in the conference room right outside my office, there's even more, because to build great relationships, we have to know who they are. So let's see. If I go right over here, all those photos, those are their families. I've got their goals up there. I know who they are. I know who they work with. I know what they do. I know about them, because it's hard to care about people that you don't know about. And this isn't something you can fake. Like, you either genuinely care or you don't, but it starts with just the willingness to care about people on who's ever the best at that. if you care about them, you're gonna take care of them, you're gonna do great. If you don't, bless you, you know. But some of it just they know that I can walk up here and I'll ask them about their kids. And their kids are family photos up there with their kids' names, you know. And when you do that, that matters to people. It's really not that different than you'd have it here in the US. And things that you'd like people to know about you, that you like to talk about and share, they probably do too. The only variation I've seen, if you're going culturally, the Philippines, they love to talk about food. And so typically I got questions in the beginning, did you eat yet? What'd you have for lunch? And that became a constant conversation. And I can remember back when because we started this company in 2018 and we did it originally just to work with MAPS coaches, because that's where we saw the need. And that's my background. I've been a MAPS coach since 2015. There's a gentleman, Tony DeCello. I took over most of his clients. Great friend, still is to this day. But when we started building this out, I had one of the MAPS coaches reach out. He said, you know, I hired this guy. I really like him, but every day he wants to know what I ate. Why is that? I'm like, well, that's how he likes to talk about, you know? And, you know, one of the interesting things, this is going to come across offensive, but one of the big things that we've learned, I had a lady thank me and she says, before working here, I was able to feed my family every day. And we borrowed food from our neighbors so we could feed our daughter. And that was really sad. And the reason she wanted to work here is just because she knew she's going to be able to eat consistently. And that kind of touched my heart. It was a big thing, but it's kind of like, it's a point of excitement. It's something they look forward to. You know, no one wants to say, I just ate rice. And a lot of times that's all they had. And it's better than nothing. So, but they like to talk about that. They like to talk about food. So we'll talk about food.
Goosebump moment.
Well, there's a lot of very humbling experiences when you work with people on the other side of the world. I always ask people, and this is just how I get into a relationship. I say, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? And I had someone back in September who just started with her company. She says, you know, my biggest goal is to buy my mom a bed. She's never had a comfortable bed in her life, and she was a little bit older. And she sent me a picture right before Christmas. And she says, I wanted to take a picture and show you this. I was able to buy my mom a bed for Christmas. And Jen here, I'm going to embarrass you, Jen. When she started, her goal was to be able to go ahead and provide her parents with a home. And last year, she was able to provide her parents with a home and had a home built for them. And she bought a hectare of land. And these are things that were her goals and things she dreamed of. And I'm excited that she was able to do it. But, you know, when people are going ahead and they're achieving their goals within your world, there aren't bad days, there aren't turnover, and you can get through a lot of things. But just, you know, who are you and what do you want out of life and how can I help you get it? And if we work together, great. Great questions. What else you want to know?
So
I
from
have
the start,
one.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if I start now and I want to hire somebody and I just like literally push the button and say, hey, give me a consultation. What's the average time from now until the time that person is working for us?
So our goal is to have it done, no matter what, under 14 days. Typically we can be under a week, but it's always going to depend on what your schedule's like. Because there's the first meeting with the growth backer where they can go ahead and get what we have. And then we're going through the available pool with the career backer and say, here's people we think could do the job description. That's a relatively quick process. Those meetings, they're really quick with. Then they're going to go ahead and say, okay, I think this is the head backer that can go ahead and train to this job description. And then they'll come back to you and they'll say, okay, Ryan, we found you 5 candidates. Go ahead and interview these 5 with us. And then you'll pick your one. And if you can do it like fast, like same day, next day, we can be pretty quick, like under a week. But if you're like, okay, I want to hire someone, I'm on a family trip for 2 weeks, you know, then it's a little bit longer than that. We prefer to move quick and we're built to move quick, but a lot of times that's not where people are at and it's okay. So we tell people an average 14-day turn time, but when they want someone quick, we can get them someone quick. Great question.
So another question is, so you mentioned earlier about like as they get more trained and things like that, you may have to reward them more. So what does an annual increase or raise look like for someone? Like if your normal cost is, I don't know, I think it was $1,200 or $1,500 a month for a 40-hour a week person. What is are you looking at next year? It's going to be a 10% raise or 20% raise, or where are you at in that?
Ryan, I'm going to let you know a little secret. with this one. It depends because it depends on what currency fluctuation is doing. Right now, it's really good. And so everyone got a raise. And you don't have to provide the raise. Currency fluctuation provided it. You're
Got
like,
it.
yes. So sometimes it's not that. When it's pretty stable, I'll do a 5 or 10% raise if they're good. And that's pretty normal. So, but when the currency adjusts, you don't have to. When the ratio's like $1.48 and then it jumps up to 1 to 54, they've got 8,000 more pesos per paycheck. I'm like, yes. So, not
Makes
to be
sense.
like, you don't have to, but sometimes that problem takes care of itself for you.
Okay. So the other question was if like you have that somebody wanted to provide a bed for their mom and you just said, look, I'm just going to buy that for you.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Like, can I
Yeah,
just
you
go
can
on
do that.
Amazon and ship it to wherever in the Philippines, or is that not work
Well,
that way?
they have different things there like Lazada, but our team will help you do that. We also watch because sometimes people tend to take advantage of people. So let us know. We watch it and document it and make sure that sometimes you're not being a little too generous. Sometimes,
Gotcha.
Greg, you need to have a call. This person's being a little extra generous, so, but we'll help you do that. And there's local places because Amazon's not going to be able to deliver everything, but you've got Lazada, a bunch of local providers and things like that we're happy to go ahead and get you in touch with and make that happen. Great question. We had Dawn, she had her hand up, then she put it down. And Abby,
I actually apologize profusely. I'm driving around town and I'm going
Well, be
in and out of
safe.
signal. So every time I post something,
you go out of signal, huh? All
can you
right.
guys hear me?
Oh, welcome back. I don't know if you know,
Okay.
but you
I'm
went
so-
out of signal.
I'm so sorry. And I am in a place where I should have signal and I don't know what's going on around town.
Yeah, it happens. You're fine.
I just wanted to let everybody know, I don't know how many people on here already have cyberbackers, but I just wanted to share my personal experience, which is I started this time last year. And I just wanted to encourage anybody who's considering leveraging some of their daily duties to consider this an option. And just I started and I was able to go, I did go through one or two of them until I found the right fit for me. And I just could not be happier. So I would just encourage you not to do what I did, which is think that you are there to train the people.
She was saying it better than me and she stopped. I think she was saying we also help you zero out the cost. So you can talk to a growth backer. We'll tell you how we do that. Because when people give us a referral, we go ahead and we reward them. And you can keep that referral and use it towards your monthly bill, or you can go ahead and give your cyberbacker a raise with it. Yeah, interesting concept. I don't know if that was it. I really liked it. We're gonna miss her. Okay, guys, if I can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm all over Facebook. I know a lot of you guys are too. I put my number in the chat. If you want to chat with someone in our growth team, cyberbacker.com. Most of the time they're online. You just jump right in, go to Zoom, and you can tell them what you're looking for. They're happy to help you. Sound good?
Can I ask one more question for you?
Sure. Ryan, then Patty.
So what's your obligation if you say, okay, I'm gonna give this a try? What's my obligation?
So try it for 90 days. You have the option to try it for 90 days. And then it's an annual commitment. And the reason we do an annual commitment is because of our promise to the cyberbackers. It's our commitment to make sure that they've got job security. And we know when there's a commitment, we can guarantee that we get great candidates. A lot of the companies out there right now, they're saying it's month to month and they can't get good applicants because the person says, I might have a great job one month, but I don't know if I will the next month. And so it's a little scary, but we always work to make sure it's a win-win with you. And you usually know within 90 days if you have the right person, if it's the right fit, and if it's going to work. So, but that's what we do. Great question. Yeah, Patty.
I missed the very beginning, so you may have said this. What is the difference in the cost for a part-time person versus full-time?
It depends on the job. Because like a part-time data entry person, that's going to cost you like maybe $800 a month.
Okay.
Like that's not an expensive hire. If you're looking for a full stack web developer, 3,000 to 3,500.
Yeah.
If you're
for that.
hire me, it's a very high rate, but I'll be there with a big smile on my face.
Okay, there you go.
All righty. Well, thanks, guys. You can go to cyberbacker.com. You can call me or message me 801-686-8043, or you can email me, Craig@cyberbacker.com. Sound good?
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
We'll see ya. Bye.